This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Xcast. As ever, the truth is in here. I am your host, Carl Sweeney, for this episode. Welcome back to I Want to Believe Minute, the series we're currently undertaking, where we're going through the second X-Files movie, 1 minute at a time, 1 minute per episode. And today we have reached minute 66. So this picks up with Calla and Ferreri in the elevator. That's 65 minutes and 0 seconds. It runs all the way through to 65:59, and that's as Mulder and Whitney are chasing the suspect. So we're into a bit of a chase scene now, aren't we, Clara Cook, who is with me?
Yes. We're going to be running for a while.
Yeah, because this runs over the next few minutes. Before we start, a quick reminder that you can follow the podcast on social media. And if you're enjoying the show, please consider dropping us a quick 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Also, just quickly, you can support the podcast by subscribing to our Patreon, patreon.com/thexcast, for bonus content, early releases of episodes, and more. Okay, so, this is the start of the chase sequence. Clara, it's quite an exciting chase, I suppose. It really kicks off when... Because what happens is Calla and Ferreri turns up. He sees Exhibit and co, Agent Drumming and co from behind. He's able to kind of sneak away. He walks out onto the street and is seen by none other than... remember that civilian guy they told to stay outside the building in the previous minute? Agent Mulder? Yeah. Sorry, not Agent Mulder. Sorry, Fox Mulder. He sees him. He gives chase, so he's back in the heart of the action. And... I thought it was quite an exciting chase, and in this minute, Mulder runs in front of the bus, for one thing, and we hear somebody crying out like, "What are you, nuts?" And, there's lots of oncoming traffic, going, that they're running around. Quite exciting. What did you think?
Well, so to prepare for this minute, I actually watched some scenes of Mulder running from different points in the series and different from the first film as well as this film.
Does it include the revival? Did he run much in the revival?
I didn't look at the revival. I should have looked at the revival. But he does run in the revival. I'm sure he runs in the... There's one scene where... Well, he kicks some ass in the revival. We know that. So I was looking at the evolution of Fox Mulder's run. And it's true that in early days he used to run. We had a big trench coat, so he used to sort of flap around like he was running with his arms flapping around. And as time's gone on, he's got better at running. So I'm glad to see that Mulder is still working on his fitness, even if he's no longer in law enforcement. But also, I guess, through having been chased or through chasing people, he must have got better at running. I think he does quite a good job here. He's quite fast. And, it is a bit ridiculous. Like, he is a civilian. He's just so super driven. I mean, we're calling it like almost obsessive now. He's going to run into oncoming traffic to chase this guy. But I never miss a chance to see a running Mulder. Like I always think it's a kind of. For me personally, Mulder's character. I think it's always funny when they try and make him an action man, just because he's such a. I don't know. He's such a cerebral person. Do you know what I mean? Like for me, I see him as like, and we have to forget he also qualified as did a degree in psychology and stuff, right? So
Oxford University.
Yeah, which of course he never seems to properly use that much. But he's a profiler. He's a cerebral person. I do sort of see him sitting in an office, like eating sunflower seeds and poring over cases of folders full of pictures of random creatures in the woods and stuff like that. So whenever he is suddenly an action man and he's got to suddenly run or climb something or jump from something or jump onto a moving train, I always find the whole thing rather amusing. It just doesn't seem to fit his character, I think. But it's also fun, so I'm not going to object to it.
It is fun, and like that episode you mentioned where he jumps on the moving train, that's the end of Nice, isn't it?
Nice,
7:31. But isn't it the start of that episode where he's kind of chasing the guy who's got diplomatic immunity or whatever the the guy, whoever the guy is, and doesn't he kind of get knocked down? And
yeah, because the guy knows like martial arts or something.
He's got a few moves.
Yeah, and kicks his ass. And then...
But like Mulder's got a second gun holstered because he says he kind of quips about like I got tired of losing my gun, kind of like the idea that he's not like a Superman type character who always comes through these fight scenes kind of unscathed. Actually, sometimes he does take a beating. Sometimes he, is losing his weapon and all that. But then again, he is doing stuff like climbing on top of cable cars, isn't he? And like you say, jumping on the train and
he does get a beating in this film as well, like pretty badly.
Yeah.
So and in the revival it's a bit different. In the revival he's even more action hero-y, isn't he?
In My Struggle 2, that's the one I'm thinking of. He has some kind of because there are people coming to him there, and he's got some like proper John Wick kind of moves, isn't he? In that one.
Yeah, and also doesn't he do that in what's the season 11? There's that episode with about
is it this where they're handcuffed when they're about the AI with the language?
Yes, about the AI, yeah. And when the men with the guns come to their house and they just
right at the start of that episode, that's right.
Real action,
but I was wondering,
real action hero stuff there.
That is, but like there's an interesting
Scully though, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, but both of them, it's kind of like they're at a state of preparedness that can kind of click in. Yeah. Because they've been living off the grid or whatever, to some extent. And I think they know there's always the possibility that they'll be the focal point and somebody will come for them. And it is like they've kind of rehearsed some of those moves in that episode, isn't it? Like
they know where all the guns are hidden in the house. I think they're heavily armed as well. We're not just talking about little guns. Like, doesn't Mulder come down the stairs with like two giant weapons? I think the thing is that all of this all points to the longer Mulder and Scully remain alive, the more paranoid they get. Just rightly so, but eventually it's going to end up with them living like in a tiny shack in the woods with like landmines all around or something.
Almost like the cigarette smoking man in The Truth when he's in that cave, isn't it?
Cave.
Like, completely divorced or away from modern technology. So yeah, we've got this quite intricate chase, which is going to run through the next few minutes that we're talking about. What Chris Carter said about it is that he was able to walk to work on these evenings when they were shooting this part of the film. And he later says on the commentary that every morning in preparation, he would run this route that was going to be the focal point of the chase. So he'd run the route. He had his dog with him. And he said that he got a lot of kind of ideas and inspiration about, I suppose, how to film this chase as a result of running the route that Mulder and Whitney would actually run in the film. So what we're seeing is a chase that spans like 12 city blocks, and they were able to, properly use those city blocks and light them up night after night, it sounds like.
So is it realistic in reality, would law enforcement chase somebody on foot for 12 city blocks? I've watched a lot of episodes of Law and Order, Special Victims Unit. I'm just going to say this right now. And they never chase them for more than 2 or 3 blocks. While they're chasing, they call for backup, and backup arrives in a car. And then the car takes over the chase. And in fact, they don't always chase people in a car for 12 blocks. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then they would call somebody to be closer. They basically add more people to the chase. If the guy's going to run for 12 city blocks, 2 people can't be doing the job chasing him. You have to call for backup. I guess that's what Whitney is trying to do, right? Isn't she trying to call for backup at the same time?
Because she kind of ends up lagging behind a little bit, doesn't she? And has to catch him up later on, and they're kind of separate. Well, I'm jumping ahead, but they're separate, and that doesn't turn out too well for Dakota Whitney, as it turns out.
Poor Dakota.
How do we feel? So we've got this chase going on in downtown Vancouver. I can't remember if we talked about this before. Like the fact that the movie is filmed back in Vancouver, it's where the heyday of the series was filmed, isn't it? Seasons 1 to 5, and I think the series did have a very different feel from season 6 onwards. So it kind of gives the movie as a whole a kind of back to basics kind of feel, doesn't it, in a way? I mean, I don't know about you, Clara. I've always kind of, because of the X-Files, specifically, Vancouver has always kind of sounded and felt like a kind of mythical place to me. I'd love to do like a road trip or something one day to Vancouver. Do you know what I mean? Like, it has a weird special place in our hearts, I think, as X-Files fans,
Yeah, I think of it as an artistic, creative city, which it might be, but I think I'm basing that on the fact that a lot of stuff's been filmed there. Not that I really know much about the place. Actually, I have a friend at the moment who's living in Vancouver, and one of the things that she has said again and again is that the countryside around there is just spectacular. It's just absolutely breathtaking and amazing, and and I'm like, well, yeah, I know, because I've seen a lot of X-Files episodes where
is your friend also an X-Files fan? Because if I was living in Vancouver, I would just be like trying to find old locations and stuff like that.
I think she knows about it. Like she's a little bit younger than me, but not much younger, and I think so. She is kind of the generation that would have seen it occasionally on television. But I don't think she's not a massive science fiction or fantasy fan or anything. So I don't think. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of wasted on her. We should change places. I should go stay there, and she should come back to London. Yeah, she does. She does. She mentions the forests and the surrounding area and everything, lakes and stuff. So it does sound like. I mean, I immediately think of the sort of scenes in the X-Files where they're running through the woods and stuff. Yeah, it looks nice. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've just shared my screen with Clara. Hopefully you can see this now, Clara. It's TripAdvisor, top things to do in downtown Vancouver. And a couple of things that jumped out at me were, there's something called, the Vancouver Public Library, I'm sure would interest you. I know you like the library. But I was looking at, there's something called Science World, which is some kind of museum. That sounds fun. But then something called the Steam Clock. I think it sounds like the steam comes out of the clock every quarter of, every 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
That sounds intriguing. What else? Anything here jumping out at you, Clara? There's something called the Classical Chinese Garden.
I'd like quite a big modern art gallery above that, right? I think the
Billerud Gallery of Northwest Coast Art.
That looks kind of interesting.
It seems like there's a lot to do, because this TripAdvisor search has thrown up 368 places. Are they all in downtown Vancouver? Are they all worth seeing? I don't know, but it seems like...
And it's interesting, this friend of mine who lives in Vancouver, she previously lived in Toronto, and she does say that Vancouver has much more culture. Not that Toronto doesn't have culture, but that there are a lot more museums and attractions and places and things to do. In her opinion, obviously. So I wonder if that is the case, in terms of a cultural art scene. Yeah, look, Vancouver Art Gallery. It's an interesting building. The library. I think the library is a very interesting building with the whole roof garden. It's an interesting city because some of it looks very modern and some of it looks like modern style architecture, and some of it looks like it was sort of older style of architecture. I guess you could say that are lots of cities, but
I wonder how much of
it looks very different than London. Oh, I'm saying, or like Birmingham, or Manchester. Very, very different than the cities in the UK, I think.
I wonder how easy it would be for us to find X-Files locations now, and how many have actually been knocked down or redeveloped or whatever since.
You don't think there's an official X-Files tour? Oh, I'm sure there must be. Surely.
Would there still be the call for that? I mean, I know that there are loads of people around the world still watching the X-Files, but are there enough that can gather around Vancouver to do tours of things?
To warrant, could you?
I hope there are.
Yeah, would there be any money in creating the X-Files tour? I know that, say for instance, New York, if you go to Manhattan, that there's movie tours you can do in Manhattan because there's so many different filming sites. It might be that the X-Files is included in a Vancouver film tour because Vancouver is often used as a site to stand in for New York, right? Yeah. Or stand in for other cities. So it might, obviously the X-Files is used to stand in for Washington DC. So it might be that X-Files is included in a tour of wider film locations in Vancouver. So, or TV locations or whatever, because there are other TV shows that have been filmed. Because wasn't the whole reason of filming in Vancouver and in Canada was that it was cheaper than filming in LA?
I think that's probably what it was. It was economical. You get more money for your, more bang for your buck, I suppose, filming up there.
And maybe less public attention. I don't know. In terms of since if you film in LA, then you've got all the people that come to LA as tourists, and maybe Vancouver at the time, in that time when the X-Files was being filmed, it was maybe less busy. They could shut streets off easier. I don't know. I'm just guessing. It's probably financial.
Yeah, wasn't there something where David Duchovny said something disparaging about the weather in Vancouver, and I think some of the local businesses and things didn't take.
Well, you can see that in the TV series. It's foggy, it's rainy. I mean, you can see episodes where they're standing in the rain, and it's like they're pretending they're not standing in the rain, but you can see it in kind of just a little bit
teaming down,
or it's spitting or whatever. It's quite. I do think there is quite a difference when they move to LA and they start filming in LA. You do see the difference in the way,
definitely,
in the light and everything. I mean, it's just a different environment. It's a different part of the continent.
And sometimes they were quite clever in incorporating that into the stories, weren't they? I mean, I suppose they make a big thing about it in the beginning, don't they? Which starts with the sun pounding down and that kind of thing. But episodes like Drive, I think, work particularly well in the LA context. But I think you're right to say that it's just very different. Like the casting is very different, I think, in LA. I like the fact that I Want to Believe is back in Vancouver. I like the fact that it's got, certain cameos of people that we associate with seasons 1 to 5. We talked about Vanessa Morley popping up, didn't we, on a previous minute? And, there are a few things like that. But, this minute, Clara, there is some cross-cutting back to Drummy, isn't there? Doing that search. But most of this minute is the start of the chase, I think. So
there is a lovely moment where Drummy does say, "Someone find the lights." And I thought that was hilarious.
Oh, because they're stood there just
in the dark.
Searching in the dark.
Yeah, but also because that's the X-Files. It's like, if they could turn on the lights, then a lot of those episodes would be a lot less sinister. Do you know what I mean?
All right, Clara, we will be back to cover more of this chase very soon. Minute 67 is coming to you very soon, listeners. Until then, always remember, trust no one.